Welcome to the Boom Clap podcast, where culture and conviction collide. Cecily and I were just discussing beforehand. I feel very convicted this morning.
About cultural things, believe it or not.
Totally. This is going to be an episode with just us today. It's a throwback, I guess, to our beginnings, where it was just us talking a lot. No guest, just us. And we don't really have a plan laid out for today. We're just going to go into this and talk about things that have been happening. It's currently August, just to let you guys know, because things are moving quickly within.
And to be specific, like August 20, because something could happen later today or tomorrow. August 20.
Yeah. Yeah.
8:50 Pacific Standard Time.
Yeah, to be very specific. But yeah, just to let you know that, because we know it is election season in America and things are happening every day. And yeah, things are going to happen that we probably should discuss today for this episode that's now coming to your ears in September. But we're just getting into homeschooling here at our house. I think you're getting ready to start. So we're going to talk about some of that today. But that's basically the only plan we have going in today.
But we're not worried about it because we've done these episodes before where it's like, oh, what are we going to talk about? And then we start talking about something. And before you know it, we've covered life and death and everything in between.
Well, sometimes it's better that way because I think for you listeners, one thing that we have heard consistently is it feels like you're sitting at a coffee shop or in the living room with us chatting with friends. And I feel like those episodes that we don't plan ahead feel the most like that because it is literally like Cecily and I having a conversation for the first time together about something, not having prepared or planned or talked about it much before. And it just comes out real and raw. Right,
because we've done it before where we've talked about it a lot ahead of time. But then it's like, oh, and as we said to each other earlier, it looks like we've had the whole conversation already, right? So we don't want to do that. But we have all these incredible guests all the time. And we will, majority of the time, probably 75% of the episodes will be incredible guests. But we really want to make sure that there's like that 25% where it's just us.
I know so many of us are looking for ways to keep our families healthy while avoiding the doctor's office. And one of the ways that Cecily and I have both found to do this is homeopathy. We have both benefited from homeopathy and specifically Remedy Collective. They have been one of the ways that we have learned to care for our family. It's helped us not only with their remedies, but also the learning process. We each have their first aid kit, and in that first aid kit comes a guide with a list of problems that describes what remedy to use for what problem. It's been so helpful to have on hand. So if you guys are interested in learning more about homeopathy, but also having remedies to keep on hand for you and your family, go to remedycollective.com/boomclappodcast and use the code BOOMCLAP to save 10% on your order. And so we've had 2 episodes since we've been back, 2 great guests. If you missed those, we had Mark Clark where we answered, basically you guys, it was a Q&A of questions you guys sent to us about Christianity and faith. And we got into those questions with him. And then the week after, last week, was Katie Faust. And she's been with us. This would be our 3rd episode recording with us. So we should probably in that episode, if we didn't, I don't know, link to her previous episodes because they're all so good and they build upon each other. Really, she just has a new book and it's very good.
Very good.
So if you missed those, go back and listen. But we're excited to be back with you doing these. I don't know. I don't think it's right to call them one-off episodes, but we had invested for a while, this spring, we were we're going to invest in just doing series because nothing is going deep enough. People are having these surface level conversations and nothing's going deep. So we decided we were going to do series for a while. And we got through one series and decided, we're going to go back to doing single episodes, but maybe some series type stuff within them. So
themes
we might have a topic that we really want to dive into that we get into for a few weeks at a time. But we learned a lot from that series. But our editor put it the best, how we felt afterwards. It felt like we were making a documentary.
Right.
Yeah. If you want to talk about how you felt, you can, but otherwise I'll go into it. But
Sure, I will. And then you, because I want to hear your thoughts as well. But it was what we needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's funny. I really believe this is how God works in so many areas of our life, right? It was like, it was a great idea. And I still maintain it was a great idea. But there's more that we needed to learn from it than just presenting you guys with a series. Like, we needed to learn from it just about podcasting and organization, and just, we learned so much just doing it. And also, by the time it was done and we got back into these weekly episodes, this just feels like home. Like, it just feels like, I always have loved it, but I have this new appreciation for it. Like, it's just been so life-giving once we started recording again.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like you said we needed to do it. It was something God pushed us to do to be able to level up what we were doing for you guys. Like, it pushed us in so many ways. But at the same time, I felt more connected to the topic than to you guys as listeners.
Right. Yeah, and that was the big difference.
Yeah. And at the same time, when I felt connected to the topic, I felt like it was hard to communicate my thoughts on the topic because we were like producing. You know, it wasn't just like, we're here to discuss this today. It's like we're producing at the same time. So it felt almost like being an actor and a producer in like a movie. And like you have to memorize all these lines ahead of time. But you can't change like what you're going to say or think about it too much because you're like producing the movie too. I don't know. I've never been an actor. I have no idea what that actually feels like, but that's how it is in my mind. So anyway, I'm just happy to be doing these single episodes again and be able to go deep on the topics just in a one episode format.
Yeah. And it's funny how when we finally made that decision, like we're going back to the single episodes or weekly episodes, we should say, it was like a download of all this stuff that we want, like guests that we wanted, topics that we wanted. And we have this thing planned out like months in advance, which is funny because we're not super good planners. But all of a sudden it's like, whoa, we've got this planned. And I think a lot of it is from what we learned doing the series. But then, I don't know, it's just been a funny thing, but we're just so happy. There is something like Rita said, we feel more connected to you guys when we get to do these weekly episodes. And I don't know exactly why that is, but maybe it's because there's less of a break time. I don't know, but there's something about it where we just feel more connected this way.
Yeah. Yeah. So it'll be September when y'all are listening to this. It's ending summer here. It feels like fall here right now. So this week we've got 70-degree weather. It is beautiful. We went for a walk this morning. I had leggings and a sweatshirt on. Like, it is so amazing. Like, I love the beginnings of fall. Even though we're not really close to fall yet, like the date or anything, we're getting that lovely weather and I love it. And it makes me excited for starting school with my kids. We have had a soft start. We were going to start Monday officially, but having recorded a few episodes, it's Tuesday today. Having recorded a few episodes, we're kind of like, okay, we're just doing a few school things and tomorrow will be our official start. Even though we really didn't completely break over the summer, we still stuck with math a little bit and a lot of reading and things. But I'm really excited for it. And this summer was really good. I think I talked to you a bit about this, Cecily, over the summer. It just, I made a list at the beginning of summer, and I actually meant to put this out on social media, never did, but made these lists for my kids of things that they had to do every day. Because one problem I have with summer is it's like a free-for-all. And I can get to the end of our summer and feel like, what did we do? We didn't even do anything every day. There was no purpose. It was just like, ugh. And this summer, I feel very fulfilled. Like, I stuck with the things I wanted to do. And one of the things that got left by the wayside because of doing that was social media. I took completely 6 weeks off social media. Not that I didn't check it at all or look at anything going on, but there's some kind of detachment that happens when you're not actively speaking to people on social media. And so anyway, I was off for 6 weeks simply because the checklist I had made for myself to do with the kids took precedence over being present on social media. And coming to the end of the summer, that felt really, really good. And And there was something else I was going to say about social media, but I lost my train of thought. So maybe it'll come back to me. But anyway, it just felt so good.
Yeah. You know what's funny about summer for me is that it does feel like a free-for-all, but it also feels like a different kind of busy. And I hate using the word busy because what everyone does, and I don't want to, but it is busy. Like, so as you know, I've had a super love-hate relationship with baseball over the summer, right? So my kids played spring league baseball and then they played summer league baseball, which I was not really advocating for. It just kind of just happened, right? And anyway, it was so busy. It involved a lot of travel. It was just a lot of baseball in a really short span of time. And so that took some time. And as much as we learned from the series podcast wise, we learned from summer baseball to never do summer baseball again, which for some families, that's like what they love. And that's fantastic.
So you guys aren't going to do summer baseball next year?
No. Well, okay. I mean, you heard it here. And I'm telling literally everyone. We went to our neighbors the other day. I'm like, just so you know, we've decided never to do summer baseball again. So if next year you see us playing summer baseball, rip us a new one. Like, you know.
So are you guys doing any baseball throughout the year?
Yeah, we'll do spring league. Okay. And they even play a little bit of fall, like indoor baseball, obviously, but which is fine. Not as big a deal. Summer ball, whole other ball game. And I can't do that again. Yeah. And then which is fine. I'm somewhat over it. But now the whole podcast has heard we're never doing summer baseball again. So let it be known. But then on the farm, this is what I think is most life-giving for me and for my husband and for our kids, I think, is just like the garden and the animals. And it's like a full-time job, just like managing the food production that we do just for our own family over the summer. And so even this morning, like we were going to start recording at 8 or 8:30 and I was up like 2 or 3 hours before that just because I'm like, oh man, I got to get like going in the kitchen. But it's not, it doesn't feel like drudgery. It just feels so purposeful. And like something that really like clicked for me this year is that my husband and I have always been a really good team, but I'm just like, I could not do any of this without him. So many of you will like see the gardens and stuff on Instagram and be like, oh my goodness, that's so amazing. And I'll be like, this would not happen without him. I could do a portion of this without him, you know, and he's invested in it and he loves it. And I'm invested in it and I love it. And the kids are learning how to grow food and how to take care of animals and from start to finish, you know, and that is incredibly life-giving. So even though we've had a very busy summer, I have so much joy. Like I have so much joy. And that's such a cool feeling to get to the end of summer. But then to still look to September, because we don't start school till September is our plan, because my husband's a teacher. So we don't really go back before he does. I'm excited about that too. Like what a gift.
Your guys' school year starts much differently than ours here. So in Indiana, there were people going back the end of July.
Really?
And and we're close to the Indiana line. So I have a lot of friends. I grew up in Indiana. You guys know that. But end of July. That's and then here, public school started August 14th.
So when does summer start then? Like summer break?
May, like the middle of May.
It's just really interesting to me because, of course, this is all I've ever known, right? School goes till the end of June and then you have July and August off. And then after Labor Day, school starts. So it just feels so normal. But
some of the schools have went to like what they call a balanced calendar, which I don't know really what that means.
Like shorter breaks, but more breaks or something.
Yes. Yeah. So, well, I mean, I know what it means, but is it balanced? I don't know.
Right.
You know, balanced to who. So
it's just funny because before I knew you, I just thought everyone started school in September.
Yeah, that's how it used to be.
The middle of summer.
It's so just funny. moved up. And some people like it, some people don't, but I don't know. The best thing about homeschool, I've been thinking about this for a while and I should probably put this into like a reel or something, but the best thing about homeschool, I think, is also the worst thing about homeschool. Like you get to do everything the way you want to do it. You know, that's so great. Yeah. But by doing everything the way you want to do it, you're also not doing anything like anyone else. And so that can make a challenge at the same time. It's like such a good thing, but can also be the biggest challenge.
Absolutely. And that's something that I'm really thinking of this year, because we're going into our 8th year, I think, of homeschooling, which is wild to me. And I'm really starting to feel that countdown. Like I only have 5 years. If my son goes 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, my oldest son, that's 5 years that I have left with him in homeschool, which makes me actually not sad, but it gives me this sense of like urgency of like, kind of like reflecting on what I've done in the past. Like, have I done what I wanted? What do I want to do like in the present and in the future? Like it just, I know you're feeling the same thing probably because your daughter's same grade, right? And it's just, you just realize as time goes on how fast it goes. And when I started and he was just beginning grade 2, it was like, oh my gosh, am I ready to commit to this thing that like could be a year or could be like his whole education? And I didn't feel ready. And I felt like it was so long. And now all of a sudden I'm like grasping at the time. And so this year it's like, well, I've always been one to do things a little bit differently. I'm finding that I didn't do things as differently as I actually wanted to. And every year I've found a little bit more freedom with it. You know what I mean? But it's been very gradual. And part of me grieves that and wishes that the Cecily of 2016 would have been ready to go all in and be the person that I am now. But of course, that's not how life works, right? We learn gradually. And so the Cecily of 2024 is totally different. And when I'm looking at our homeschool year, and when people ask me about it or what curriculum are you using or this or that, I'm like, oh, curriculum. Great question. We're not really using any, like it's just amazing how things change. And while I don't have regret because this is the way it goes, I wish perhaps that I could have let some of this go a lot sooner, but couldn't. It was hard to do things
like
differently.
I said to Katie, like on, the last episode, I just really am so grateful. Like I have this fresh start with our new little boy, I feel like, and things are going to be, it'll be interesting. I don't want to say things are going to be different. It'll be interesting to see what I do differently and what I don't. Because I have a 12-year gap between my oldest and him being born. And so there are going to be a lot of things done differently. And honestly, looking back, I've been impressed with what I did do differently with my daughter compared to culture.
Oh, yeah.
Not having, because like when she was born, like there was Facebook, but there was not all the social media. I did not have a smartphone. We even laugh, like looking back at some pictures. She's like, oh man, that picture is so bad. I'm like, yeah, because that was taken on my flip phone, babe. Like,
all grainy.
Real bad. But, it's just like, I'm proud of myself for the things that I was ahead of the game on. But at the same time, there's so much that I wish I would have done differently. But like I said with Katie, like, I think it is so amazing for the moms that are just starting out right now. Like, you are entering parenting with such a different cultural, I guess, temperature than it was when you and I first became parents. It's just like you can do whatever you want regardless, but like you have this permission, you have this go ahead, and it's just different. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's a huge blessing.
It is. And it is interesting because we talked with Katie about the fact that a lot of Christians actually say, we don't need to fight these culture battles so hard because Christians do better when there's persecution. And in a way, this is that same sort of argument of like, because of the hot temperature of culture right now, you actually have permission to do things differently because people are in disagreement about everything. So just do what you want, right? As far as like what you think is best for your family. And so there's definitely truth to that. There is so much truth to, because I kind of pushed back on that argument with Katie, because Katie agreed with me as well. Like, just because the cultural temperature is hot doesn't mean we like, oh, let's just take the benefits of that and not fight to like get things on a good moral standing point. Like, I still think we can do that. We can take the benefits of it and pray for revival and use this moment to like gather all the knowledge that we can from all of the outlets that we can, because that's what you do right now. But then also still, you know, in your homes, homeschool is a great example of this. If we're talking about homeschool, this is where you set the moral foundation or try to like build that moral character into your kids, right? So it's kind of like, yep, this is crazy. And it's brought me some benefits as far as like now I feel empowered to live the way I believe is best because people are fighting anyway. But taking that and applying it to your kids' education and character.
Yeah. And at the same time, not falling to the pressure of the other side, because really in anything, there's always like two extremes. And you see people like almost making you feel like you're not doing things the right way, or you're not crunchy enough, or you're not like homeschool mom enough if you are doing anything that reflects anything normal, quote, normal, whatever that is. Does that make sense? And so, I don't know. This brings me back to social media a little bit. I think what I was going to say earlier had to do with, leaving my phone at home. That it's all coming to me. So when I was off social media for that 6 weeks, I like just many times accidentally like would go for an hour and a half trip away from my house to a softball game, not because we were in travel softball, but because we live so rurally, you have to drive an hour to an hour and a half to like find anybody to play softball against. No, it wasn't that far. Like we had one that was like an hour and 15 minutes and the rest of them were like a half hour to 45 minutes away. But still, like that's pretty far for not travel ball. But my point is, I was like finding myself leaving my phone at home, like just forgetting it.
Yeah.
And that's the power of being off social media. But one of the things I did when we had our son was there were several women I followed on social media. And I haven't really talked about this, but I do think it's important for moms to consider. I like didn't unfollow because I still really enjoy their content, but I wanted to be purposefully consuming their content if I wanted to. So I just hid them from my feed or hid their stories, because stories seem to be where people post like the daily memories with their children.
Right.
And that way, because like when you have 5 other women having babies at the same time as you and you're sleep deprived and everything, like you only have so much capacity to store those memories in your brain. And I wanted to remember how my baby's little toes looked. I wanted to remember his coos and cries. And I didn't want to remember all of these other mothers' birth stories. So I just simply hid them from my feed so I could go and check in and see how they're doing and give them some hearts on their content because they worked hard on it. But like, I didn't want to be seeing the daily stuff. So I do think on the flip side of this wonderful, cultural shift of being able to talk about the different ways of doing things in motherhood, there's also a pressure and in your face type of thing where it's hindering some of your own relationships with your children. And so anyway, that's a tip for new moms.
And I mean, that really plays into what's going to be on the podcast next week with Joey Odom talking about phones and habit formation and relationships. Not that we don't want to see everyone's happy families, because I do. I love it. But you're so right. Our brains only have so much capacity for memory. And mine, I honestly think, is less than most people, unfortunately. Like my brain just, it's like, who did we have on the podcast a year ago? Like, what did we talk about?
You do forget things.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a memory issue. I think it's a priority issue. Like I
hope you're right.
I think you're better at prioritizing like what you retain than I am.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that is true. Like I used to be able to, like when I was studying in nursing, for example, I would have like a coiled notebook just full of information and notes, like front to back. And Kyle would hold it at night before an exam. And I would go through the whole thing almost word for word, like 100 to 200 pages. Like it was crazy. Do I remember any of what was written in those notebooks now? No. It's like I would write the exam and my brain would be like, delete. You know what I mean? Like It's like as soon as, not that that stuff's not important, but let's be honest. A lot of what's more important in nursing is like what you learn practically and hands-on, like not necessarily what you wrote in your notebook.
That is basically all, like it's 99% of what you need to know. Is
and I
learn on
didn't
the
want to
job.
say that just in case you disagreed, but it's true.
No.
And it's like my brain instinctively knew it and just like flushed it down the toilet as soon as the exam was over. And it's true for me in a lot of ways. It's like, it's probably never going to matter again. Unfortunately.
Oh, man. So
I don't remember most of my childhood, but
I don't know if I told you this or not, but this summer I saw a girl. So I was going to say everything I needed to know in nursing, I learned from my preceptor. Like I had the best preceptor. Like she was so good, Julie. She was amazing. And it's just the best, most caring nurse, but also very smart. And so anyway, this summer I saw at the baseball diamond, a gal I used to work with. And she did a summer internship and I was her mentor for summer internship while she was in school. And then I precepted her on the job. She enjoyed working with us so much. I got to precept her. And in talking with her, I don't know if she didn't know I lost my job or just had forgotten, but because she worked at the same hospital, but she had moved to a clinic job. So she may not have known because the word got around the hospital portion, but maybe not filtering into the clinics. So anyway, she was like telling me, like, what are you doing now? And she said, I interviewed for a new position. And she said they asked her what made her want that position. And she said, my preceptor in nursing, like she was so fabulous and she just taught me so much. And it really gave me a love for this area of nursing. And so I wanted to do that. And I was like, I hope you did not say my name because that will be the nail in the coffin on you getting the job. And anyway, it was just funny. She was like, well, I didn't. I'm like, oh man, you should have known that before you said that.
She did not say your name?
No, she didn't say my name, but it was just like funny or I don't think she did, but I was like, you should have known that I lost my job before you told them why you wanted the job or whatever. It was just kind of funny.
And if anyone's listening to the podcast for the first time, she did not lose her job because she was a bad nurse. She was an excellent nurse. It was COVID problems. Yeah.
I have the receipts to prove I was a good nurse. 15 years of really high marks from coworkers and managers alike. But that's neither here nor there. It's been a blessing.
They don't need good nurses, Rita. They don't need good nurses in the ICU. They just need nurses that comply with everything.
That is what they want.
Yeah.
That is what they want, unfortunately. Unfortunately. And I'm not saying there aren't still good nurses there. There are several I worked with that are still there that I trust and things, but there are those that aren't too. So anyway.
I am so happy that I get to share Pure Annata with all of you. I am extremely picky, as you have probably heard before if you've listened to this podcast for a while, extremely picky about the products that I use in my home and on my body. I do not want anything fake, fragranced, or filled with phthalates or all sorts of microplastics. It is not good for your body. It will disrupt your hormonal system and potentially cause you a lot of issues. So I'm constantly on the lookout for brands that I feel good about to bring into my home and to share with my family. Pure Annata is one of those. They're a cosmetic company founded by a homeschool mom who wanted something safer for her family. And so she created this line of beauty products, which is amazing. I was previously purchasing all natural makeup at a very high price tag. And I wish I would have found Pure Annata sooner because they make it affordable to shop healthy for yourself and for your family. Go to pureannata.ca to see the full line of things they offer.
Well, what else do you want to talk about? I came on the podcast really fired up this morning. Election is brewing. There's all kinds of drama in the United States about that. And so recently I did a poll. And we'll talk about the election more like in another episode, like full in detail and voting and whether or not you should vote. That's very important. But anyway, I did this poll on are people voting or not? And I take a lot of time to make posts just because I think it's really hard when you're posting actual content. You have to think about it for people to pause to think about it. So I try to write things in a way that like it's easy to read, easy to understand, like it doesn't leave you with like, what does she mean here? You know, so it took me like a week because I have a toddler I'm chasing around to like spend like a half hour here, a half hour there, like putting together content, typing up an email that will be sent out to my email list and stuff. And I posted it, and like one person can just like sometimes like just get me like, oh, fired up. And like, I love it though, because I need a fire under my butt sometimes. Like I kind of live for like a fire, you know, to get me going. So anyway, I came on here talking to Cecily and I'm like, this chick on Instagram literally like, and I didn't even get into it. She's like, we can just talk about it on the podcast and that way it's fresh.
It's so funny to me though, because when you're talking about someone that you like and appreciate, like this girl that you precepted, I ran into this gal, and you'll call her a gal, and then someone like, that makes you angry, ran into this chick.
Yes, I know. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but like the conversation started out, she like questioned me about my numbers. And I clarified my comment. She's like, well, you're just talking about swing states, but you pulled everyone. I'm like, I know, but what I'm saying is like the numbers transfer. Like they may not be exactly the same, but they're going to be similar enough
perhaps
across
within the margin of error, right?
Yes.
Like close to it.
Yeah, similar enough across every state that it applies. And then she got upset because I didn't address the why. And I'm like, I literally put on the last slide that I will get into the reasons in a like another post that follows up with this and an email. And it was just like this argumentative stance, and it didn't make sense because I was addressing every question. And then it boils down like to, she comments back, she's like, you're clearly ignoring everything, and ended up unfollowing me and putting it where I couldn't, like blocking where I couldn't tag her. And I had went to see, I'm like, I think this girl follows me. And so yesterday, and she'd followed me for a very long time, very invested in my content, agreed with everything. And I'm not fired up about her disagreeing with me. Right. Cool. I can take that.
Totally.
What I'm fired up about is this echo chamber everybody wants to be in. It's like, as soon as you disagree, not even with the premise of what I'm saying, but with how I presented it, like, and maybe it is. I really think that is the underlying thing. She may be disagreeing with the entire premise of voting and how she knows that I probably will vote, I think is the detail that is missing there. But anyway, it's like as soon as you disagree with someone, it's like, I don't want to see any more of that. And like, I am the type of person that does not understand that. Like I follow, and this is one thing I feel like I always need to blast at people, because I think a lot of times people look at who you follow and like, oh, they follow that person. Right. Like 50% of the people I follow, I disagree with, because like I purposely put myself outside of the echo chamber because I want to see what other people are thinking, because it sharpens me. But also like, I just don't want to be this dull person that only listens to the people that agree with me, and I only hear feedback that I agree with. Like, I purposely comment on posts where I know there'll be disagreement, because it's good to hear opposing sides. And I just don't understand living this way. Like, it's really sad to me.
Well, it's just easier to live that way, right? Especially if you maybe don't have a firm grounding for why you do believe what you believe. Well, it's easier to just shut off opposing views then, right? I think that's what it comes down to. Like everyone likes to just be free and easy, and to have your beliefs questioned is too hard.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then I think that that's what people tend to do. They don't debate on the part that they disagree with even. They find something else to nitpick and pick apart instead of just debating the subject at hand. That's causing them to want to disagree with something. Yeah. You know?
I just got to say, I appreciate your energy for stuff like that, because I think it's good the way that you engage in your comments. Like you post something of substance and then engage with it. You know, like I think that's good. And that's where I don't think I'd ever be good for social media, because you know me, I'm like, I just don't, I mean, I get fired up about stuff, but it has to be very specific. I don't know, like, you know, like, for example, this was not serious content at all, but remember that Stanley reel that I did?
Oh my gosh. People were ridiculous.
People were ridiculous. And it just kind of took off. And I got like, I didn't even realize what was happening because I like posted and then put my phone down. And then when I picked it back up, I like saw what was happening. And so I started to try to engage.
I had started arguing with people for you.
And then I just basically said, Rita, I can't do this. This is not like, I'm just like, it's kind of like with summer baseball. I'm like, why do these parents care so much about this? Why do they care so much? You know, like why are we doing this? This is my attitude to a lot of things and it shouldn't be. So I feel like there's a good balance of like, so thankfully you kind of took over in that reel for me. And like, we're commenting to people because I'm like, I can't. Why do you guys care so much? Like, not that I'm saying you shouldn't care. You should.
This is another thing. Like, it was a serious subject, but you made humor out of it.
Right.
And people like need like really dumb humor that is very obvious.
Right.
Or they don't get it. Like satire and sarcasm are kind of like out the window. It's like, whoa, what are you doing here? I don't get it. Like I've gotten to the point where I put in parentheses when I make a sarcastic comment, read sarcasm. Like, because people just, I don't know. It's
which is
like,
funny because like with that Stanley reel, you would think the black and the white, the slow motion and the Sarah McLachlan song would have been clues enough, right? But no.
Yeah. That was great. That reel was great. It was so funny.
Oh man.
Yeah. Which brings me to, there was something else I was going to say. Oh, actually, I do think you would be good at social media because I think that it is a hindrance to me to want to post in the manner I do with a bit like deeper content and then follow up conversation. I don't think people generally crave that. I think I have a very specific audience and a small portion of them who do crave that.
Right.
But not,
I have the ability to just like be like, let it go.
Yeah. I think that that's a benefit actually on social media, not a, I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. I guess I'd have to start posting more regularly to like experiment with that.
Yeah. No, but what I was going to say, so that Stanley comment brought me to Lead Safe Mama. And so interesting. So we had her on, I interviewed her and I went into the interview talking to her like beforehand. I said, I don't think we agree on everything. Actually, I messaged her that before she came on because I knew she'd see our podcast and she had Bernie Sanders. Like she went to an event and like stood up with Bernie Sanders. I'm like, obviously we don't agree on everything. So I don't want you to think that you can't come on our podcast because I don't need to agree with everything someone says to find what they have to say interesting and valid information to hear. So I didn't want her to not want to come on our podcast. And then leading up to it, speaking to her beforehand, I was like, you know, we don't agree on everything. She's like, well, I just want information about lead out there. Like, what's there not to agree on? I'm like, exactly. Like, that's my point. Like, let's just talk about that and the lead industry. And it's so interesting how similar it is to the pharmaceutical industry. And so we had this whole discussion and everything. And then within the next couple months, and like, I will say she has that, I don't know her politics really, but she has that kind of liberal woman energy where it's like kind of angry, kind of abrasive, like takes offense a little bit easily to comments sometimes, but like, I like her and I really enjoyed that conversation. Totally. But anyway, afterwards there was a few like natural line of thinking, low tox type moms on social media that kind of like I screenshot these stories and sent them to you. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so mean. Like they were just like going against Lead Safe Mama. And I'm like, so this is something that's been bothering me in the natural wellness, low tox community. It's like, we want to push low tox and natural and all of these things, but don't come at us for doing something that's not low tox or natural. Don't comment on how we're like, there's hypocrisy in this situation. And I get it, like, I'm not saying they're wrong for that, because like, you can only be so low tox. Like, you got to let it go at some point. Yes. I totally agree with what they're saying, but it's like, I don't know. Can you like pull my thoughts out a little bit more here?
Yeah. Well, I think what it boils down to is when they get angry about someone like Lead Safe Mama caring so deeply about lead, they're forgetting that her child has been impacted by lead poisoning. Yes. Of course, this is going to be the issue that is near and dear to her heart that she feels passionate about. Whereas for them, it could be vaccines. You know, maybe their kid has been vaccine injured and they're going to feel passionately about that. Or perhaps it was mold poisoning that this other whoever's child was impacted by, or themselves, or parasites, you know, like for everyone, they're going to have been impacted by something that's made them feel passionately about the things that they do. But to say that someone else who's talking about something else that impacted them is fear mongering just because it's not something that they're worrying about.
That's the word, fear mongering. Thank you.
Yeah. It's not having any grace for people. And it's just totally discounting the idea of like putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Yeah. You know, like, I don't know. I just feel like that's something that it's such an old saying, put yourself in their shoes. But it's true. It's true. You have to, because you can't understand why someone feels passionately about something unless you try to understand their life experience, you know?
Well, and it's like they misunderstood what they were mad about. They didn't accurately like process what they're actually mad about. Like these natural moms were mad about their followers coming at them with information that Lead Safe Mama had presented.
Right.
So instead of getting upset about what people did with her information, they got upset about the information itself. And it's like, why would we ever be upset about learning information? Yeah. Like we can all choose what we want to do with that information. And so their followers made a choice that offended them, not Lead Safe Mama. And so anyway, I think that's what...
You know what speaks to what you said? It's like, we should be glad for the information and then be able to choose what to do with it. Like, so for example, I learned from Lead Safe Mama that those Corel plates that everyone has have lead in them. I still use them. And then after the Stanley reel had its moment on Instagram, I felt like I couldn't walk around with my Stanley anymore because people would be like, why do you still have your Stanley? And so while I don't use my Stanley as often, I still have it. And it took me a couple months after that reel was done before I was like, okay, I just can't not use this because it's convenient. If I'm going all the way an hour and a half for baseball on a 30-degree day, I want my Stanley filled with water. You know what I mean? And so it's just like, you have the information and you know the risks. Choose what you want to do. Same thing with the vaccine conversation. We don't need to stop anyone from receiving a vaccine or encourage them to get a vaccine. Just give them the information. Let them make their decision.
And that's really what it boils down to, that when we have these vaccine conversations, what we're like, angry is not the word. But what's so frustrating and angry about is the lack of informed consent.
Right.
It's the lack of information and the availability of the information. It's not the choices people are making. And I think we have talked about this before. It's just, that's one thing that people get wrong. And that's how relationships are harmed on both sides, is being so upset about the choice people make when it's not the choice that we ourselves would make, rather than, you know, being happy that we do have a choice, you know, like, I don't know.
Are they equipped to make the choice, right? That's the thing. We should be advocating that people in anything are equipped to make an informed choice. And when they're not being equipped or they're being forced or they're, you know, that's what we should be getting angry about, not the choice itself, for sure.
Yeah. Except I know people are going to be like, but what about abortion? Like,
right. Well, I mean, that's different as far as there's an actual death, murder taking place, which I know is such a hard word that people get really upset about when it comes to abortion, but
it's true.
That is what it is. It's a life that's being snuffed out intentionally.
Yeah.
So,
but too, having the information to make a choice, like this is why on the abortion topic, getting people access to ultrasounds and things is such a good thing, because so many people are
that's equipping them with information.
Prone to make a choice for life when they do have all the information. And that does speak to the abortion argument and the pro-choice argument itself quite openly, when you realize that they're against that access and against people having those that information leading up to the choice, you know?
Yeah. Okay. This probably feels like a violent shift in gears. And my parents, like make fun of me for this all the time. Because we'll be like, as a family, discussing one thing, and then I just take it in a completely different direction.
No,
because
we need to. Let's do it.
Okay. So I was really glad, and you can tell me how you feel about this, but I was really glad we were not recording weekly episodes of the podcast when the Olympics opening ceremonies debacle was all over social media. Because there would have been this pressure to speak to it. Not that it shouldn't be spoken to or about, you know, but I don't even know what I want to say about this, except for the fact that I was glad we weren't recording at that time. How did you feel about all that?
I didn't even think about whether we were recording or not, to be honest.
I didn't either. It was more like a retrospect.
Yeah, I did share about it some on social media, and I actually just talked to my dad about it this weekend because he asked if I saw the closing ceremonies, and I'm like, no, I didn't. And he was like, it was just demonic. Like, these things are awful. He said he thought it was worse than the opening ceremony even, but I haven't really seen anything about it. And so my take was, yeah, we should talk about it. Like, my take was, I want to have a discussion about how we discuss these things, because I think often we don't take into consideration that these events are created in the manner that they are to get a rise out of people, get some rage going, and get people to talk about it. Because when you look at the viewership of the Olympics and the opening ceremony specifically over the last several years, it's down.
Yeah.
And this helps drive conversation. And so while I do see value in discussing it, absolutely, I'm questioning the value in how we discuss it from the standpoint of just like sharing the pictures all over social media. Like, this is demonic, but I'm going to show you. Okay. Like, please watch it. And so then it's like, well, at what point is it where we're actually upset about the event? Like, are we actually upset about the event? Or is this our bread and butter? Like, are we excited these bad events keep happening because this is our bread and butter? This is what puts money in the bank, what puts likes on our feed and followers in our follower base to be able to generate some income for the platform that we have. Like, you know what I mean? It's... I don't know exactly how. I mean, I know how I feel about it. I'm not sure the right way to think about it yet. Like, I'm a little all over the place, because I do think that we should be discussing it. But I don't know. I guess what else you're discussing matters. Like, do you stop at discussing all of the rage bait? Like, is that all you do?
Right. And I think, like, kind of like what you alluded to when we started talking about this, is we need to just recognize that these people, the marketing team for the Olympics, the people who plan this, they're not idiots. You know, they're not just like, oh, I like this idea. Why don't we do this? You know, like, they know, they think about these things. They take the temperature of the different countries involved and the larger cultural temperature, and they make a very informed decision. There's no accidents at this level. This is the Olympics. Summer Olympics happens once every 4 years. The planning is happening many years before that. I think the next one's in Los Angeles, right? They're probably so far into planning already, it would boggle the mind. This is not an accident. So it's like, I think there's two ways that we could look at it. One is like, viewership, wanting to get the viewership up. Or perhaps, on the other hand, and I think it's probably a combo of the two, but on the other hand, Is it like, are they so deep into this death type, demonic type cult that they're actually just promoting their values?
Oh, yeah.
In the best way they can. And I think of like Sri Lanka, like we talked about with Katie Faust in the last episode, and how they went all in on ESG and DEI and it destroyed their country, but it was actually pushed by the World Economic Forum and BlackRock.
Oh, yeah.
I think the same thing is true with these huge international things like Olympics. This is not just Paris being like, hey, we're Paris, we're a little quirky, let's do this. It's like there's big money behind all of this. And I think that's what we need to keep in mind. But the fact is, yes, we can talk about it and we should bring awareness, but from what perspective? And keeping in mind, like, what is the battle we're fighting? You know, it's not against people, essentially. This is clearly a spiritual battle, you know, like even if it's all for the money, it's still a spiritual battle because of the route that they're taking these things. So I hope we're praying as much as we're raging, you know?
Yep. That's a quote. Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that was missed in the Olympics, well, first of all, there was a lot of praise for Jesus from the athletes.
Yes.
Like
really
we saw
cool
that.
to see.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
But the opening ceremonies, like people talked about the Blue Man, they talked about the, Last Supper. I'm still not 100%. Like my dad kind of told me about a few things that I hadn't read. So I'm like, okay, maybe it was for sure that. But anyway, it was all gross regardless. One thing that happened in the opening ceremonies, and she sang in French, so I have no idea. Maybe it was a demonic song. But Celine Dion sang, and it was beautiful. She was in a tasteful dress, unlike Beyonce, who also sang. Yeah. And it was pretty. And she has stiff man syndrome, which is apparently some autoimmune disorder. Yeah. There was a whole video of her, she had a documentary done about her recently. And so I watched like a clip of that and then watched her singing. And I actually had put it together to share. And then it was like, I'm frustrated with this conversation. I'm not going to do it because people, I don't know. I just didn't want to have people coming at me. I was like, I don't have the energy today. But anyway, I'm like, there is something really good, like where she's using a talent God gave her and overcame this huge obstacle to be up on that stage, and no one really talked about it. They just talked about the Blue Man under on a plate, on a platter.
That's the problem, right? Like we focus so much on the evil and the ugly, and we forget that it's like, what if we focused on the beautiful? Like, how would things change? Right?
Yeah.
Like that verse in Philippians, whatever is true, whatever is lovely. Like, think about these things. I hope it's Philippians. Sometimes I say things a million. I'm like, I think that's right. But
yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. Anyway. So
one thing I don't think we're going to get into enough today, but AI, like guys, everybody's talking about the election and it matters. Absolutely. But it's like we get so hyper focused on one event going on and forget all these things going on that actually matter. And one thing I never thought of with AI, and I heard this first on, I don't know if you listened to any of it, but Elon Musk had Trump on one of those like spaces or whatever they call it on X, where like you can listen to them just like candidly talk.
Watch it.
It was very interesting. Is an interesting way of addressing people. It felt very raw and real, and I enjoyed it. I only listened to like a half hour one night, but anyway, and I think it was maybe like an hour and a half long. But one thing he talked about, and I'm sure he didn't come up with this on his own, but was the energy that AI takes.
Oh yeah.
And
huge.
Like how it is crazy amounts of energy and how we're like trying, like our grid can't even begin to handle it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting. Like that's somewhere I want to go on the podcast eventually. So guys, hold us to talking about that, because AI is a big deal in many different ways. But when it comes to energy, it's very interesting how that's not being talked about, especially within the quote green and clean community.
Yeah. Well, I was just like Googling this as you're talking to make sure I was going to get the right words. But server farms are massive. And I'll see if I can find just a picture that I can somewhat show. And they just look like something like this. And there's just these massive buildings that they have to like constantly air condition and stuff to keep, you know how hot like a laptop gets when you use it for an hour. Now imagine all these servers, and and I don't even know if that's what they were talking about, but that's huge energy just to like keep that cool enough in order to function. And then as we start using like AI, well, when you think of like just how much the average person is using their Wi-Fi in their home, it's like pretty constant. You know, we're all drawing on all of this all of the time. And then the more we draw on these things, which will happen if we continue to pursue AI as much as we do, the more that's going to happen. So I don't even know if that's what they were talking about with the energy requirements. That's certainly a part of it though.
Yeah. So this is something else. I know I brought my dad up a couple of times, but we had a really like good conversation. He was over here. So my oldest got baptized last weekend, which I'm so happy about. It was a wonderful day, and just it's been very important for me, for my kids to have their own relationship and understanding of what it is. And for your child to come to you and say that they want that, it's just like the best feeling in the world as a mother. But anyway, so my family was over, and he was telling me that Google is building like these 3 information centers in Indiana over the next few years. So pretty interesting. I was just looking up. It says Historic Day, Google's $2 billion data center campus to partner with I&M, which I'm not sure exactly what that is, and Ivy Tech, which is a like college. And it's called Project Zodiac, I guess. I don't know. This is super interesting. I'm just like looking up more about it, but it's something on the radar that we should probably talk about in the future. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, for sure. That is interesting.
And speaking of data storage, I've gotten a couple things in the mail just the last couple of weeks about data breaches. And one of them was from Ticketmaster, who I have not done business with in at least 10 years, maybe like 12 or 15. And so it's so frustrating. Like these places are just storing your data. Like once you do business with someone online, it's like there forever. Like,
wasn't there some sort of social insurance number breach in the States as well? It's like it's ridiculous amount of social insurance numbers were compromised in some way.
Like social security numbers?
Oh, right. Sorry. It's social insurance number in Canada, but social security. Yeah.
Probably. I mean, I don't know. I just like, oh man, I don't know. That's a frustrating thing for me. I'm like, why is there no, like of all the legislation we come up with, why isn't there any legislation on deleting your information after like a year or something? Why do they just get to hang on to your information so that it can be breached 15 years after you've done business with them? Why is there some kind of like unwritten contract that it's okay to hang on to all your personal information forever?
Right. Well, and my mom's credit card was just compromised somehow. They don't know how, but it was compromised. And so the company sent her a new card. But by the time she got the new card, it had already been compromised because I guess whoever had compromised the first one put a tracker on it. And the credit card company didn't do things properly or whatever or something. But so they had the new one before she even had it.
Oh my goodness.
And it's like, first of all, it's crazy to me because
that feels like it could turn in a vicious cycle.
Right? Anyway, and I'm like, who knows how to do this? Like people know how to do these things. And they just do it.
Yeah. Well, just like we talked about before, like thieves are simultaneously the laziest and like, I don't know. They just like too lazy to go to work, but they also actually like,
they take that phrase, work smarter, not harder. And they really put that to good use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man. Did you know during the coronavirus years, poison control centers saw a 20% jump in calls related to cleaning products? This is because of the bleach, all-purpose cleaners, antibacterial cleaners that people were using around their homes. And regardless of your fear during that time and your increase in cleaning, a lot of people just in general use these products around their home. And not only are they bad for you to potentially ingest, but they also are absorbing into your skin. Your skin is an organ. This is where Rocasa Organics comes in. They have cleaning products with natural organic ingredients that you can pronounce, you know what they are, and they are safe for you and your family to use. You can feel comfortable using them. They also have lotions and soaps and just a wide array of products that you can use in your home. I know our house has Rocasa in basically every room now. So go to rocasaorganics.com and use the code BOOMCLAP to save 20% off your first order. All right. Well, do you want to talk about anything else? I feel like I had other things on my brain to talk about, but it feels good just to chit chat. And hopefully you guys can chit chat back at us about some of the things we talked about.
Yeah, I think that about covers it. I'm really excited for some of the episodes we have coming up. Like,
me too.
Oh, excited. Anyway, you'll hear more about them as we go. But next week, you're going to be hearing from Joey Odom. Just an incredible conversation. We talked about it a little bit throughout the episode. Phone use, habit formation, and relationships, their place in our lives, what relationships we value, and how we can show that. So such a good conversation. Yeah. Great guy. You guys are going to love that one. And who is not affected by phone use in their life, right? Like it's
I feel like that
huge.
Episode sounds like it could be really boring when we just state it.
It's not.
But it's
that's what I want people to understand.
I felt so much joy during the episode.
Yeah.
Like,
and
something
hope that
about
things
him.
could be different. Yeah. Like, you know, like imagine if some families put into practice the things he's talking about and it just spread like ripples in a pond. Like it would be incredible, right? So anyway, don't skip that one or any of the ones we have coming up because you're going to love it. I don't know the last time I was this excited about some of the stuff we have coming.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Yep.
So thanks for listening, guys. We enjoyed having this conversation with all of you. Don't forget to check us out. The links are in the show notes as always, where you can find us on Instagram. Don't forget, we do have an Instagram for our podcast, which you can find at Boom Clap Podcast. Check that out. And thank you for listening to the Boom Clap Podcast, where culture and conviction collide.